And then the hospital is going to have bigger pads for you as well, so we don't have to worry about these little ones, okay?
네. 뭐 소주만 오게 주세요.
This actress is accused of the unthinkable.
And she did tell us that she was hoping that the baby would hurry up and die. It's a very tragic case. It's a tragic case for the family, frankly for the mother. Very tragic and emotional investigation by our team.
It's a case that has even shocked law enforcement in Florida. This college student is under arrest for allegedly giving birth to a baby, then letting the child die and burying the newborn's body in the backyard. And even more twisted than the disturbing details that we know about at this point is that deputies say just moments after she gave birth, the suspect carried on with her day as if nothing happened at all. And even that night, she took to the stage and performed in a musical. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Hey guys, real quick, before we get into this episode of On the Case, we're able to bring you this story because of our partner Morgan & Morgan. There is a reason why On the Case is one of the top true crime shows on YouTube, and there's a reason why Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. For more than 35 years, they have been fighting for the people, and they've recovered more than $30 billion for their clients, and the proof is in their track record. With more than 1,000 lawyers across 100 offices nationwide, hiring Morgan & Morgan is like hiring an army to go into battle for you, a team that will fight hard to get their clients the compensation they deserve. Not all law firms are the same. You hire the wrong one, and you may be beat before you even start. If you are ever injured, you can check out Morgan & Morgan, and their fee is free unless you win. For more information, you can go to forthepeople.com/OTC, click the link below, or scan the QR code on your screen. Right now, authorities in Florida are still trying to piece together how a story like this could happen and how someone like the 20-year-old now facing charges could go about her day as if nothing happened at all and be able to perform in front of an audience as the member of a cast of a musical. This is newly released body cam video we just got in from the Flagler County Sheriff's Office showing 20-year-old Mae Demegillo in custody. She shows little emotion as she's put into a cruiser more than 24 hours after allegedly giving birth and doing something that is hard to imagine. The Flagler County Sheriff just gave an update on what Demegillo told them in custody, and the medical examiner, they say, has a preliminary cause of death for this baby, which we'll talk about in just a moment, in a case that is truly horrific. But before we get to that, let's lay out how this began.
The caller informed operators that a 20-year-old Mae Demegillo had sent messages to the caller stating that she had secretly been pregnant and unexpectedly gave birth at home. The messages indicated that Demegillo's baby was born alive and crying, but that Demegillo had done something to the infant.
That's the announcement that deputies in Flagler County, Florida made about 20-year-old Mae Demegillo. She is a college student, and she's also an actress. Deputies say in the early hours of the morning on March 5th, around 3 o'clock, she gave birth to a baby girl on the toilet inside her home in Palm Coast, Florida, not far from Orlando.
When deputies arrived on scene, they met with Demegillo. She was a little hesitant to speak at first, and then she advised them that she had been pregnant and delivered the baby and led them to a shallow grave in the backyard. During the investigation and detectives conducting interviews, Demegillo told them that she had delivered a baby in the toilet. The child had been crying initially. She then had walked away and returned, and the child had stopped crying and moving. At that point, she hid the infant in a duffel bag in her closet and went about her normal daily routine.
Deputies say Demegillo allegedly told them that the baby was alive and crying when she gave birth, and that there is a major fact in this case that could have a huge impact on how this story plays out in the legal system, and also the impact it has on Demegillo's life, potentially for the years and decades to come. Here's what the sheriff said on Monday, and I will warn you, this is difficult to listen to.
What I can confirm for you is that she stayed in the bathroom cleaning up the blood using paper towels and wash towels from the birth of the baby until the baby died. And she did tell us that she was hoping that the baby would hurry up and die. It's a very tragic case. It's a tragic case for the family, frankly for the mother. Very tragic and emotional investigation by our team. And more importantly, you know, here's a small, not even, you know, a few minutes old really, baby that likely could have lived, that frankly drowned to death. And so the ME has confirmed that the cause of death, preliminarily, still we don't have the final report from the ME, was that the baby died from drowning. The baby also had an abrasion on her head, which we believe is from the birth and the baby falling into the toilet as a result of the birth and hitting her head. And so no changes in the charges. We are still investigating this case.
We just got the arrest affidavit for Demegillo, and those court records state that she told detectives that after giving birth, she paced between her bedroom and bathroom for hours until the sun came up. When deputies arrived around 4 in the morning the next day, Demegillo gave a statement after being read her Miranda rights. Now, Demegillo claims that she had no idea that she was pregnant at all. She allegedly told deputies that she felt like she was having cramps, maybe from her period, and then she gives birth to a baby girl who weighed just 3 pounds, 6 ounces. Deputies say that Demegillo claims that the father of her child didn't know she was pregnant. It's unclear who that person is. Now, before we get into what happened after Demegillo allegedly gave birth, I do want to talk about what we know about this 20-year-old at this point. So Ann Demegillo, she is a college student, and I will tell you, she has a very interesting major considering what she is now accused of. She went to Daytona State College, but she's also an actress, at least she is part-time. This is a picture that a local theater has on its Instagram introducing her last year for one of their shows. Now, she was most recently, and by recent, I mean last weekend, a member of a cast putting on a musical at a local theater that had several showings, and she played a part in those showings. After allegedly giving birth, after allegedly watching her own child die in her home, Flagler County deputies say that Demegillo went on to perform at a theater that night in New Smyrna Beach, Florida, where she's been playing the character Virtue in the musical Anything Goes. So she gives birth and then allegedly goes on to take on this role as a showgirl who comes in during the big musical numbers in this performance. Now, as far as her theater career, it seems like she was very active in the area, constantly performing in productions. There's another theater that has a caption on their Instagram. As they introduced her, they said, at college at Daytona State, she's been pursuing a degree in forensic science. And she's also performed in several productions. Her first one at that theater was Little Shop of Horrors. So now you know a little bit more about her. Let's talk about the timeline that authorities are laying out of what allegedly happened on March 5th. And it begins around 3 o'clock in the morning when she allegedly gives birth inside her home. But then Demegillo allegedly goes about her regular day. She had to go back to school, and then that night she performs in the musical. And according to law enforcement, after giving birth early in the morning, Demegillo puts the baby's body in a duffel bag and then hid the bag in her closet. So after she goes about her day, after her performance, police say she returns home around 10 o'clock that night.
She went to her college, did a performance at a theater, and then returned back to the home. At that point, she determined that she needed to bury the child. This was at approximately 10 p.m. last night. At that point, she then buried the child in a shallow grave in the back. She is currently detained and will be charged with aggravated manslaughter of a child. The investigation is still ongoing with the medical examiner, interviews.
Deputies say at this point, Demegillo is facing a charge of manslaughter. She is not facing a murder charge in this case. I mean, manslaughter is still incredibly serious, but it's not murder, authorities say, because she allegedly gave birth to the child, then she left, and she did not specifically inflict harm on the baby. But investigators did say in a press conference that this case is still very much ongoing. They also say the 20-year-old reportedly buried the child in a shallow grave in her backyard. Police claim that she wrapped the infant in a blanket and buried that child in a 4 to 5 inch grave in the backyard. Now, here's a view of Demegillo's home on Google, and you can see the backyard there. Deputies say that only her mom was home at the time all of this happened. Deputies say they only found out about this situation because Demegillo sent a social media message to someone about what allegedly happened, and it was that person who called authorities to go do a wellness check at her house. Demegillo never called 911. She never sought medical attention or EMS to come to her home after all of this allegedly took place. Now, for as shocking as this story is, deputies say they were even more stunned by what allegedly happened, claiming the suspect herself did not appear to be shocked at all.
Oddly calm. But I can't, everyone expresses grief and everything in their own way, so I can't say the reasoning, but I watched some of the interview, and I didn't see any remorse.
You described it as a shallow grave. How deep is shallow, and is the baby going to get a proper burial after the investigation is conducted?
As far as the grave, deputies only had to remove, I'd say maybe 4 to 5 inches of dirt to discover the baby. As far as the rest, we're just not there yet.
Was the baby wrapped in anything?
No, sorry. A towel? Wrapped in a towel.
Demegillo is currently being held without bond. She showed little emotion on her face during her first court appearance from what we could see. Her official charge is aggravated manslaughter of a newborn child, and the judge said a hearing needs to be held to determine her bond. Now, we still have a long way to go in this story, but if she is found guilty on that aggravated manslaughter charge, she could face up to 30 years in prison. This charge, it's not murder, but it's still a first-degree felony, and that's the most serious class of crime in the state of Florida. Now, we should also note that Florida has safe haven laws.
Under Florida's safe haven law, parents who cannot care for a newborn may safely surrender the child to any fire station, hospital, or police station, which obviously is something we encourage anyone to do. Palmco's Safe Haven Baby Box allows for complete anonymity and is located at Fire Station 25, which was activated on September 30th, 2025. Parents can quietly and safely place their newborn inside the secure, climate-controlled box without having to interact with anyone face-to-face. As I stated, the investigation is still ongoing, trying to figure out every aspect of it. But if anyone has any information, they are encouraged to call the Sheriff's Office at 386-313-4911.
Joining us now to talk more about this case is retired NYPD Detective David Sarney. Always great to have you on Law and Crime. You look at this case, and it's not a not a murder case. She's charged with manslaughter. She'll be arraigned on April 7th. What do you make of this not being a murder case and kind of the reasoning behind it from the sheriff?
Well, I'm hoping. Well, thank you for having me. I'm hoping that the prosecutor could upgrade it to a murder because the problem is the intent caused death with a murder. And I think that's what they're concerned about because based on the information they have, she was born alive, the baby was born alive and then allowed to die. So if you're looking at it that way, they don't have enough. They're going to probably have to wait for the medical examiner to come back with some more information. So that might be the reason as to why they're doing it that way. I'm hoping they upgrade it because, I'm going to presume they're looking to do that because the crime is heinous. There's really, unfortunately, we see so many of these and it seems to be continuous. And it's amazing that we see these things time and time again, where there's so many opportunities to do what's right, and the selfishness and the lack of compassion or regard for human life, we see it time and time again, especially the age 20 years old.
It's incredible. And you think of the fact that she, there's kind of this, she goes on with her day. I mean, she goes on with her day. She goes and she performs in a musical, according to the sheriff. It's It's an unbelievable story in the worst of ways. And when you look at the manslaughter, like I understand where the sheriff's coming from and saying that, look, there's not like that intent that it would be a murder. But could a prosecutor argue that the intent of the fact that you witnessed this child pass away, allegedly, and then you leave for hours? And if you hadn't sent the message that the sheriff says that she sent to a friend who's the person who calls 911, we may not even know that this had happened. You know, can that be seen as intent in a case?
I would hope so. And that, this is what happens with between the courts. They're going to do what they're going to do. They have the discretion to upgrade or lower the charges based on what they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt. What the sheriff's office has at that point was enough to make the arrest based on manslaughter. Because what might have happened if it went through, and this is what happens in the criminal justice system. The police make the arrest. They confer with the prosecutor's office to determine whether this will continue on as the case we stand is a felony misdemeanor. They could downgrade it. They could actually drop charges if they wanted to. They at least kept the charge now, and I'm gathering the fact that they're still waiting for more information to come in to determine whether or not they could prove the intent. I mean, the actions seem to be, but it's never enough. And that's the one thing about detective work, and we want to get more information, but we have to wait what we have. And I guarantee this, just because you have an arrest doesn't mean the case is over. Again, can be upgraded if they want to or not.
And so she's read her Miranda rights, and then she says, allegedly, that the baby was alive, and then the baby stopped moving, and then that's when she allegedly wraps the baby. I mean, it's difficult to talk about because it's just absolutely horrific. But when it comes to building a case, I mean, clearly that is her admitting that this baby was born alive, and then the baby passes away, and then she does nothing. But what more evidence can you get to determine that that is actually what happened beyond just what she's saying?
Well, you have, I believe, text messages between the person, the person that she was in contact with. That's one aspect. And that comes back to the coroner's report. It comes back to what the ME can determine if that baby was alive when the baby was born. And and you're dealing with a child, an infant autopsy. So it is very intricate. It's definitely difficult. It's going to take a little more time. And that's why you have to see, when she said the baby stopped breathing, was it due to the fact that she caused this, that? Was there anything on the baby or on that body that shows that was more than just stopping breathing? Did she compress the chest? Did she put something in the baby's mouth to stop that? It's horrific to think about. I mean, so many people want kids, and you see this, and you're like, oh, it's beyond it. 20 years old, and she knew she was pregnant, and she decided, she made a valid choice. Valid choice to leave the baby in a bag, and then when the baby was absolutely dead, she buried the baby. And great work by the investigators to get her to make these admissions during the interview and interrogation.
Yeah, and I know she said that she wasn't sure she was pregnant. I think the phrasing that the sheriff used. So, I mean, that's something that you're going to have to, I mean, does that matter even? The idea that like, she'll say, I didn't even know. And I'm not sure, like, I'm not a doctor. I can't tell you one way or another about that. But like, we see a case that we've talked about in the past, this girl, Lakin Snelling, she's up in Kentucky, and she is accused of concealing a pregnancy. That's one of the charges that she's facing. And it is believed that she knew she was pregnant when it happened, and she was close to full term. This, not sure how far along the suspect was. But with that said, if she didn't know, does that factor into how serious the charges could be in this case?
My whole thing is, when she gave birth, then I mean, that's really what it comes down to. The birth of the baby. The baby is known. Whether she knew 3 months before, 6 months before, whatever it was, whether the baby's determined, that's going to come back with the autopsy. But she gave birth. Not only did she give birth, they talk about safe haven for babies and infants. Could that have been done? She decided, and again, this is why the autopsy is so important, and the medical and the scientific evidence is so important to this, to determine if the baby died on its own by ceasing breathing, or was the baby pushed to that point. In other words, was there some sort of compression or strangulation of sort that ended the baby's life? But even that doesn't get away from the fact that once you gave birth to a baby, you've got to do something. Her choice was to let the baby die and put it in a duffel bag and walk away. No one called, nobody 911, none of that. And that's what we have to look at. And that's why the difficulty intent. She's young. The defense attorney's going to play she's young. She wasn't aware of it. We can at least look to fact right now the manslaughter would be beneficial to charge. But if you add the murder charge, I wouldn't see a reason why not to. But you have to prove that. And that's the problem with this case. You're going to have to prove that part of it. And that's why the MEs, they have to wait till the ME comes back with something.
Because in the arrest affidavit that we read through, she, after being read her Miranda rights, allegedly said that, she gives birth early hours of the morning and she kind of paces between the bedroom and the bathroom for hours till the sun comes up. Then she's sending a message to this friend about, or whoever the person may be, about what happened. And that person is the one who calls police. But, she goes about her day, goes to school, performs in a musical at night, and then comes home and buries the child. Had she, and listen, there's part of this that, a traumatic experience, I'm sure, to give birth in this way. Had she just picked up the phone and called 911, would there have been a crime here?
No, because she's trying to do something. Whatever happened, she's giving birth. And you understand that during the birth, you're not going to make a 911 call. But any time between the pacing back and forth, any time between that moment in time, that's why the detectives probably really pressed on the amount of time utilized by her during this. How long was it between birth and when you walked back and forth? I don't know the intricacies of their interrogation, but that would be something I would ask is like, how long was before you decided to get up, put the baby in the bag, and then walk out? Because any time within that time, call 911. If the baby died during childbirth, that's one thing. Would there still be an investigation? Absolutely. But the what she did after the fact is really the pressing aspect of this. She was able to compartmentalize the fact that she gave birth and the baby's dead to going out and performing in a musical. That is not actually consistently normal with someone who just went through a physical, probably her first birth, and being able to do that.
The sheriff said that she was, I think the phrase he used was oddly calm. And they kind of reiterated that twice in the news conference, that it was just the body language. There was not remorse. There was not, to what they could see, just any sort of shock for what she went through. As an investigator, certainly from the public, that, is open to interpretation, and it kind of, makes you kind of, as you piece together in your mind what happened and what it looked like. But like, as an investigator, how much does body language matter?
Body language does matter because what happens is you find moments of people who are comfort and discomfort. And when you see something very matter-of-factly telling you something, does that lend? And that's the one thing about these video interrogations. You can see that. It's hard to translate that on paper. So this ability to do that with video can show that. And it's beneficial in the prosecution to see how people respond when they're asked these questions. As matter of factly as she may have been during this interrogation, as a personal level, and a professional level. Professional level, I'm not concerned about that. I'm looking for things that make her feel uncomfortable. But if she's not uncomfortable, that's kind of a personal thing going, what is she uncomfortable with? Because leaving a scene with a baby, and and this is an issue we're talking about. We're losing the moral compass in society. These kids are growing up to be amoral superheroes in a sense, the amoral Superman, where they don't know. It seems like right and wrong there's a gray line now. There's a really gray line between what you consider right and wrong, and now that gray line's gotten bigger. Where you have somebody, and this is not the first person that's done it. These are people from varied stages of life, various locations in life, who've decided that their morality is their morality and it doesn't necessarily have to fit society's morality. To walk away, and this could have never happened. We would never have known unless that outcrier, in a sense, told anybody. Because she could have done this and no one would have known for weeks, months. Who knows how she would handle it.
Yeah, and to think too, you just pick up the phone and call, and from a criminal aspect, that probably isn't a crime. You go to a safe haven box if you can, which is, these great laws where you're able to drop a child off, just no questions asked, at like a fire department. And that was available in Flagler County where this is taking place. And you just wonder why. We haven't heard her side of the story yet. And of course, she's innocent until proven guilty on whatever the charge may be. I think for the detectives too, as you come across this scene, and again, it's not the first story like this that we've talked about even within the last year, but I guess how much training does law enforcement do where you know how to handle a situation like this?
Depending on the department, depending on the agency, we when we talk about special victims in New York City, NYPD has a special victims division that deals with child cases. Now we've actually almost every case now doesn't go through the detective squad, the numbered squad. It goes right to special victims, and we have people who are specifically trained in dealing with child cases, in handling these things. This would be an investigate DOA investigation, so it's not really with particularly child, so it would be handled by the detectives in the homicide squad. But you're dealing with the case as you see. This is something that you don't want to see, you don't want to have. As a detective, you don't want this, but it's what you do. And that's the thing. You have to go through this. How it affects you later on is big, because I think we, as investigators, we don't get a chance to, we deal with everyone else's problems and issues and the worst thing scenarios like this. Having a way to vent it out and get it off of your mental stress, because this is what these do. I mean, I can't imagine as a detective not wanting to be so angry at her, and you've got to restrain yourself because you know what this case is. It's horrific, but you got to do your job, and the training you get is sometimes very basic depending on the agency, and sometimes more extensive depending on what you're particularly doing in this case. This is a DOA investigation. A numbered squad would have had it. That's really what it comes down to.
She is slated, just according to the online court records that I can see, to be arraigned on April 7th. Is there a timeline, like for the detective speaking with the district attorney or the state's attorney in Florida for Flagler County? I mean, is there a kind of a time that starts now, like a timer of we want to have this information by the time she appears in court? Because she's currently being held without bond, but then that could come up and be decided potentially at April 7th. But it's going to, how does that arraignment date kind of impact what you're doing now as a detective?
Well, that would sometime in New York City, particularly New York State, particularly, we have a timeline when someone's incarcerated. We have we have the grand jury. Once they're indicted, the clock ticks on the amount of information we get. We have discovery. In other words, we have to fork over all our information to the prosecutor, who then forwards it over to the defense attorney. That is it. When you have this type of case, you're working not particularly against the clock, but you want to make sure you have everything available, so then the charges that you're doing in the preliminary hearings and so forth will stick. So you're going to have very basic information. You may not have the autopsy right at that moment. You may. It's a month, so hopefully you do. You've gotten all of the videos you have. If there's body camera videos from the officers, you get that evidence. You put that on the table. You forward that to the prosecutor. So there is a time frame in New York City, in New York State, when it comes to dealing with discovery. It's like there's like a 20 to 45 day rule, depending if they're incarcerated or not. So with Florida, it may be different. And the one thing is, I have family in Palm Coast, and I know where the Flagler County Sheriff's Office is. I don't know the distance between where she is, but the opportunity was there to do something, and she chose to do nothing. And that's where I would press as a detective. We show intent based on the actions that she took. I'm not worried about the mindset. Her couple mental state was she didn't care, and you could show that, and the intent will have to show, and hopefully the intent can show if, again, process goes the way it is. Did she cause the death of that infant? Just that the baby stopped breathing, does that show that she caused the death of that baby? And that's why I think the issue of intent is there. But she just didn't care based on the information you have right now.
No, I mean, to go to not just class, but to go, and she performed literally in a musical. It's just, it's an unbelievable allegation that she's facing. And the sheriff was very clear that this investigation is not over. And just at this point, still facing a very serious charge. I mean, it's a class 1 felony to be charged with manslaughter of someone so young, but we'll see what happens next. Retired NYPD Detective David Sarney. It's always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, and stay safe.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify, and we're also now streaming on Peacock. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.